Hello everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing what I guess you would consider the second album, although it's kind of meshed in with her first album, The Fame Monster by Lady Gaga. Her birthday was 2 days ago. I had planned on getting this video done that time, but things got ahead of me. So I wanted to make sure I put it out this week. So The Fame Monster is, like I said, it's an 8-song album. It's not an EP. An EP, if I'm not mistaken, has to have 7 or less songs. If the album has more than 7 songs, it's considered an album, not an EP. I believe that's correct. I don't think it's 6. I'm not entirely sure though. It might be 6 or 7. So this wasn't originally going to be like an album. It was going to be just part of a re-release. Sometimes at one point there was only going to be 3 new songs put on this for the Fame. But Lady Gaga in 2009 realized she didn't like the idea of a re-release. I agree with her. And it felt like to her, more importantly, she had so much she wanted to say, and to put this out as a separate album that also ties in with the first felt like a smart move for her, as she considers the Fame and the Fame Monster to be like yin and yang. If you look at the album art, you definitely get that a feeling and aesthetic. It's a much darker and brooding record with some very gothic influences, some very dramatic glam rock influences as well. This was done on purpose to kind of contrast the sunnier side of Fame, which is celebrated on her debut. This album is all about the trappings and pitfalls of fame, and sex and love and all of these things, life in general. So we get a much more dramatized record, and I definitely find it to be Lady Gaga at her smartest in terms of creating undeniably infectious, classic four on the floor type dance records. This album is unapologetically harkening back to so many different eras of music. And it's like ABBA rejuvenated. There's Ace of Base influence, there's tons of David Bowie influence, Queen influence, and it all feels sonically cohesive as all of the songs have a slightly darker undertone to them with a lot of gothic undertones, as I said. The album cover was deemed a little too dark by her record label. I definitely love the album cover. I think it's very dramatic, especially with the makeup. It has that meltdown quality, which is sort of what all of these songs are sort of coming from. This sort of like the highs and then the lows of living this sort of lifestyle, and also just life in general. It's not necessarily all about the fame or money. This album isn't about glamorizing that in any way. It's deeply personal, and I would argue in some ways it's more personal than the Fame. The Fame felt a little bit it felt very removed from Gaga as a person. And especially from Stephanie as a person, though there are songs on that record that are very personal. It does come, pre-packaged in this wigged up and dolled up kind of metaphorical package. You have to kind of chop through a lot of layers of pop facade to get to the meat of the matter in a lot of cases. And there's still a lot of glamorizing. I mean, this era was really what kind of got her in the spotlight for dressing up in very, exotic haute couture pieces. It got her to be labeled as to be expected to be shocking. I mean, her music videos for this album, there were 3 of them, Bad Romance, Telephone, and Alejandro, are some of her most complex and enigmatic music videos she has ever created, not to mention the set design, the, costuming, the fashion. It was just all over the top, but it was also so needed for these songs, because these songs were all over the top and they needed to be done in that fashion. I would have hated to have seen them done in a lackluster way, and I would have loved to have seen a music video for Dance in the Dark. That's the one thing I always will, lament about Gaga's career, is that that single was never a real single and a music video was never made. I always had a music video kind of envisioned in my head for Dance in the Dark. It's one of my favorite songs on this EP. And it just never sadly came to be. I had this idea of this gothic castle, a little bit vampire-esque, and a little bit of a, the idea of silicone, saline, poison, inject me, this sort of alchemical Frankenstein sort of story mixed with amazing choreography, kind of harkening back to Michael Jackson's Thriller. I felt like all of those things would have made a tremendously amazing video. I love how she references all of these stars who reached certain points in their career and met tragic ends, like Liberace, John Benet Ramsey, Sylvia Plath, Judy Garland, the one and only Princess Diana. Don't ever fall apart, you'll always be in our hearts. I love that sort of sing-rapped bridge. It feels so Feels so Lady Gaga. It's so emblematic of this sort of art house fashion style that she was going for. Um, and the intense Euro disco beats that were propelling these songs forward. The one song that sort of isn't that is Speechless, which is this diamond in the rough of this album, which is a very 70s glam rock ballad. Also makes me think a lot of Elton John. And this song is, of course, about abusive relationship. But the production, it was produced by Ron Fair, is just such an exquisitely honed and crafted song. It features some of her strongest vocals and delicate and off-putting songwriting, all our bubble dreams and your cigarette stained lies. Everything is just so well constructed, and the soaring raspy vocal delivery of this song is just undeniable. My favorite song on this record would be Alejandro. There's a lot of Don Juan womanizer references into this song, but it basically is about a fear of men, a fear of betrayal, a sort of cynical attitude towards all these men, or Alejandro, this figure. But through her visuals for this song, the song came to be about so much more. I depict, and I believe this music video is a lot about the treatment of homosexuals in the Nazi and Weimar republics in the 1930s in particular. And it is an ode to the gay community. And so I think this song became something that it sort of started as Gaga's idea and then sort of extrapolated into something that maybe is a little bit further removed from her own personal life and became more of a bit of a tribute song. The Stephen Klein directed music video, I remember watching it when it first came out, and I'd already been obsessed with the song, and I was so excited to see what the video would be like. And it just, I mean, it left me very puzzled, very confused, as it did everyone. And I did find the very dark, militant, totalitarian imagery to be very stark and very kind of brooding and creepy, as I think we most do. I mean, who can forget that ending image where her face seems to like demonize in front of our eyes? It's a very disconcerting imagery. And of course, she did get into some trouble. I mean, she's consuming a rosary. It's all over the place. But that was Lady Gaga at the time. You know, it was all about shock value, and I do miss that. The shocking theatrical presence that she had, the amazing choreography, just something about the art house, and like I said, that sort of work with whatever we have to make anything happen sort of attitude. Expect the unexpected. It's not so much the trajectory of Gaga's career right now. Her career is much more classically influenced as it is right now. She's really trying to solidify herself as a songwriter and a musician first before a performer. I think that makes sense, as her early days were so much more about her performance, and although she was still writing these songs and performing them with amazing vocals, that all kind of got buried behind the facades. So the videos and visuals were this interesting glimpse into all of these possibilities of what these songs could mean, but also of all the themes surrounding them. It is a Red One produced track, and it definitely has that Ace of Base Swedish pop influence, which makes it so undeniably catchy. The opening is by an Italian composer, Vittorio Monti. It is played on a violin. It's a Hungarian piece called Sardas. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And it carries the backing of the whole pop melody structure of this song. So we also have Bad Romance. As everyone knows, this song is the undeniable flagship song for this record. Me personally, I find the replay value not as strong for this song for me as the years have gone on. It was so incredible when it first came out. It was so iconic, and now there are ways in which she's done pop better, I believe. And though this song is classic, dramatic, operatic pop for her, really, and it was the perfect stepping stone from the fame. It feels very much like a prototype song for what the whole Fame Monster album was about. The fear of romance, the fear of it all going wrong, mixing in all of that exotic, European flair with the French lyrics and there's actually a lot of Alfred Hitchcock references. I didn't really catch this at the time, but she mentions several Hitchcock films. She mentions Vertigo Stick, Psycho, and Rear Window. And I thought that was really clever. She says that in the second verse. The music video, over the top fashion. Again, a bit of that off-putting sort of I don't know how else to describe it, but like this sort of monster human hybrid idea of like using, these iconic made famous by Michael Jackson, like monster dance moves. I mean, of course, this whole album was how, Put Your Paws Up, Little Monsters came to be. So that iconic choreography as she sort of comes out of the like sarcophagus or isolation chamber in this sort of like, it all feels very German, this sort of like laboratory, and is in this sort of like very kind of stark background, referencing, gambling, drugs, money, all just a little bit offsetting and unsettling and confusing. But at the same time, it doesn't distract too much from also the just glorious nature of this, the catchy melody of this song. So Monster is sort of like the song that gave her the idea for the Fame Monster as an album. It was inspired by the fear of attachment. And it's again another very Red One produced sound for her. Very Europop, very sexual. The male vocal interluding in, which some people have speculated is Timbaland, we're not sure. I love the line, he ate my heart and then he ate my brain. Again, going off of this sort of Frankenstein vilifying, big bad wolf sort of twisted fairy tale aesthetic that she's employing to describe an ex-lover or a potential romance that she may have. There's a lot of very feminist undertones to a lot of these songs when, speaking about women in positions of society where, I mean, they have to deal with a lot of monsters. And, I can't help but think about Harvey Weinstein in some of these cases. I mean, I think he would embody sort of the fear and the monster that a lot of these songs are talking about. Although in this case, I think Gaga is singing a little bit more playfully and not so serious about like some serial rapist. But it does feel like it's hinting at, these very powerful men in Hollywood or in fame who have abused women. And sometimes at the time, the women had no idea what to do, but come up with this sort of way of telling it through song. I mean, it feels as very much inspired by Lady Gaga has opened up about being raped. And this, I'm sure, has had some sort of playing into, even though she talks about it just being a fear of attachment, there's a lot of allegory and metaphor. The idea of being bitten by the monster, the big bad wolf, so to speak, sexually, it's unfortunately, it's something that women have to confront and deal with so much in the position of the Fame, which, in the first album, there wasn't any sort of hint at that. It was like, oh, well, it's all fun, it's all sex, it's all money. Well, there's a dark side to that, and that's what this album is uncovering. So I've already talked about Dance in the Dark, how much I love this song. I love just the synthesizer work. I love the propelling Eurodisco melodies and backings. Everything about it, it's just fabulous. And then we have Telephone, her iconic collaboration with Beyonce. This song was originally written for Britney Spears, and I can sort of hear that. To me, this song is a little too simplistic pop-wise in its music construction. I would have liked it to have been a little bit more interesting. I don't know, it just feels a little bit tepid in comparison to some of the much more lush and more layered, textured Eurodisco pop songs that we have on this record. It's a fun song, but it's not much more than that. And like I said, it doesn't really have high replay value for me anymore, though I won't doubt its iconic value. I do think the music video was way too lofty and produced for such what I would consider kind of simplistic song, which is fine. It made the song a little bit more special, I suppose. I mean, the music video, this iconic duo of Beyonce and Lady Gaga being outlaws on the run, going to poison an ex in a restaurant. It's hilarious, it's cheesy, it's humorous. It's all of these things, and it was meant to just be like this rooted to the screen sort of experience where you had no idea what was going to happen next, and you just knew that you were in Gaga's world and you just wanted to stay there forever. She talks about Gaga's fear of suffocation is the sort of root for the fear of this song. And she wants just to be able to let loose and have fun. I don't want to, pick up the phone. I'm going to be dancing with my girls. I want to stay away from the heavy romance stuff for a minute. I just want to breathe and let loose. That's a fear people have, again, kind of coming with attachment. Gaga has said she feels as though it's her worst song for her personally. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it was for Britney originally. And I feel she feels a bit removed from it. And in some ways, I can agree with her on that. This song doesn't actually feel so much like Lady Gaga to me to some extent. It doesn't even, her voice is so kind of processed and altered. It just feels very kind of like any pop star could have sung it. And that's not to say it's totally a bad thing. There's pop for pop's sake. but there's just something kind of impersonal about it. So Happy I Could Die is another really interesting deep cut where she talks about, she hints at bisexuality. And this is about alcohol. And this time she's looking at herself in a sexual way. She's talking about playing with herself. She's talking about feeling herself. There's a lot of allusions to masturbation. There's this sort of drunken sort of revelation that comes through in this song. Lady Gaga acknowledged that Lily Allen was an inspiration for this song, so there's a bit of that influence in there, which I think is really interesting. And so Gaga's placing herself in sort of two places. She's actually a bit the sexual aggressor in this case, as well as the sexual victim. And alcohol is the medium through which these two are interacting, and she's acknowledging that breakdown through this song. The idea of So Happy I Could Die is that perfect sort of gothic parallel juxtaposition of saying, you know, this is so perfect, but it's also so deadly for me that I'm putting myself in this position. There's just this sort of seductive sort of giving into your salacious and darker side. And I think that leads perfectly into the final song, Teeth, which is not my favorite song on this record by any means, because this song is all about just like debauchery to some extent. Giving into that wolf instinct, which she was so afraid of at the beginning of this record. The odes of sadomasochism and perversion. It has a little bit of country influence in there, but what gets lost in the sort of sexual metaphors is the idea of showing me your teeth. Yes, there's the oral sex illusion, but it's also show me your true self. Teeth is a metaphor for truth. She felt that for many years she replaced sex with the truth and was conflating the two. And so she's trying to get to the truth. And this is sort of about the fear of it, but also the longing for it. And that sort of thin line we all walk where it's fun to have fun, but we also need to understand what we're really doing. I would agree. It sounds very different from the rest of the record, even though it ties into the whole gothic feel. I feel as though it's not as propelling. It just doesn't feel like it's dance, but it's not really that danceable. It's good sort of background music for like a porn film, in my opinion. It's not really much more than that. So although I love her sort of pastiche and her sort of over-the-top dramatic like vocal delivery on this song, it's not much more than that for me. Overall, this is a really succinct and brooding Euro house record, and that's kind of what it is, but it's also so layered with metaphor, so layered with illusion and allegory about fear and about death to some extent as well. And so it feels very weighted. And you may be dancing away to these songs, but you forget the darker kind of undertones of it, which is fine. But it's important to sort of remember, and that's why I like that the album cover is so dark, that this is coming from a distressed, troubled place. Let me know, any little monsters, in the comments what you think about this EP or album. It's not an EP. I definitely am glad it is a full album of 8 songs. I definitely don't think it fits with listening to The Fame. They feel like they're 2 separate projects, honestly. There's also, I mean, there's such a step up in the production on this record from The Fame. You can just hear the differences. It's like they weren't recorded within the same year. You can tell there's such a production step up as well as songwriting step up. And so they don't really feel like they fit together. So I have a hard time placing them into the same album, as it was packaged as a deluxe version in 2009. By the way, this album did come out, I think it was November of 2009. I can't remember the exact date. I always say that at the beginning of my videos, and I didn't this time. Anyway, let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this review. I am going to review The Fame. That's my last Lady Gaga record I have to review on this channel. I've already reviewed Joanne, Art Pop, and Born This Way, so please check those out. I'll link them in the description. Please give this a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Thank you again so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye.